Hello and welcome to another video, and in this case it's another one of my Robles videos. Now, will this video be as successful as my best Robles battles per series video? Probably not, but nonetheless, I hope you do enjoy this top 10 ranking. You see, one of the things that fans seem to talk about quite a lot, but don't actually really discuss, is the Robles music. Throughout the years, or throughout Robles' history, there's been so many different themes, so many different tunes, that a lot of them stick in your head, a lot of them are memorable, a lot of them are genuinely really good, but no one ever really talks about them, no one ever really discusses what's their favourite tune, what's their least favourite tune, etc, etc. So for this list, I'm just going to go through the 10 that I personally choose are my favourites. Now, for each entry, I'll be basically giving you a short summary of what I personally think of the tune and why I like it, and then I'll let you listen to the tune as well. One of the things that I have noticed is that Robles music is a little bit weird when it comes to copyright, and a little bit weird when it comes to who actually owns it, because not a lot of there's not really any information out there about who actually made the music, so I can't really give credit to them, unfortunately, unless it's the reboot music, by which you can obviously give credit to, but there's not really any reboot music here in this list, and well, you'll see why. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get started, shall we? So starting off this list is the Enter Sandman ripoff. That is Dead Metal's theme. Dead Metal's theme is definitely one of the more slower paced bit of music from Robles, but it is just an epic bit of tune. You know, it's, if you're a fan of Metallica, for example, and you like the song Enter Sandman, you'll definitely love Dead Metal's theme. It is the only House Robot theme on this list, mainly because as much as I like the House Robot themes, they're a little bit awkward when it comes to actual battles. You think of the context when it comes to battles and imagining this bit of music in the background. And Dead Metal's theme is definitely one of the more slower ones, and it definitely suits the more slower battles when things are going ahead. And I think it is also the most epic of the House Robot themes. When you listen to Matilda's theme, which is nicknamed Mechanical Minds, for example, it's definitely a lot more synth heavy, and definitely a lot more, dare I say, peaceful in comparison to other songs. Shunt's theme is alright, it's probably one of the weaker ones, and Sir Killalot's theme is sort of similar to Shunt's theme, but a lot more heavy driven. But Dead Metal's theme for me is just more epic. It just sounds more epic, and I know it is an Enter Sandman ripoff, but how can you not love it? It just, this constant shouting of dead metal over and over again certainly gets your blood pumping, and it certainly makes for more interesting battles when you hear this theme in the background, for the more slower battles, I guess you could say, and it certainly suits those sort of battles, and it kind of suits Dead Metal. Dead Metal is a much more slower, more sneaky sort of House Robot. If you really get down to it, he doesn't really go in for the fast-paced attacks. He takes his time going into his prey, and that really helps with this theme, which is sort of at the same pace as Dead Metal and suits him so much. comes to the reboot really suffered from one major flaw, and that was the lack of atmosphere. The reboot's atmosphere was god-awful, to say the very least, and one of the things that really ruined the reboot was the lack of music, or at least the lack of battle music. You see, they actually had music, but they didn't bother putting them in the battles for bizarre reasons. However, one tune for me really stands out above the rest. Whereas most of the reboot tunes are rather okay-ish, they're not as blood-pumping and or exciting, or sometimes sound even tribal in some cases, especially when you watch the World Series and you listen to the, I think it's called the Axe Attack or whatever that tune was called during the Terahertz Tomahawk battle, but I digress. Listening to a lot of the reboot music isn't very exciting. However, one tune does stand out above the rest, and that tune is Aftershock. Aftershock is just an awesome tune. It is one of the more robot-centered tunes, and for me it perfectly demonstrates the power of Aftershock in many ways. Aftershock is this devastating vertical spinner, and it rips and tears other machines apart. And this tune, thankfully, delivers in that sort of feeling, that slow build up before the actual attack, and there are some flaws with it. It is definitely repetitive, and I know that's going to be a little bit hypocritical once you see my number one choice, but I digress. It's a great song, it certainly pumps your blood, and if it was used in the background of the battles, honestly, it would have made things a hell of a lot better as opposed to what we got. But nonetheless, here's Aftershock. This first of our video game related music, or video game only music, this is in fact the main theme of Arenas of Destruction, entitled Arenas of Destruction Theme. it definitely feels like a Robot Wars sort of tune, and I think it's a really perfect tune to have in the background for a video game, or for a Robot Wars centered video game. It has a slow build up for the eventual more upbeat and more exciting tune, and honestly, the robotics atmosphere, the slow echoing effect it has, it just sounds so good. And it's one of those tunes that, you could almost just sit on the video game menu of Arenas of Destruction and just listen to this tune in the background and not do anything, because it is just such a great tune and it gets you excited for playing the game, even if it is a little bit glitchy. Although not as bad as Extreme Destruction. In the earlier days of Robot Wars, Mayhem and Machination was the tune that you could hear almost all the time. Mayhem and Machination, for those who don't know, is actually a part of the main Robot Wars theme. Robot Wars theme is actually consistent of 3 different parts. You got the intro, you got Mayhem Machination, then you got the ending tune. And if you put all 3 together, you can actually hear the full tune of Robot Wars. But Mayhem Machination is definitely a more repetitive tune, and I know some people might not like that, but for me, I just love the techno sort of synth sound to it and the robotic feel it has. It definitely has a lot more atmosphere, and for me it's one of those really good tunes to have, especially during the earlier days. And of course it was mainly just used during interviews or during the behind the scenes specials or Robot Wars Revealed, for example. It was never really used during battle except for that one time with Something and Pitbull where they used it, I presume accidentally, instead of the usual battle theme, but I digress. It's a great little tune, and it's certainly more repetitive than for my taste, but it's good for what it's worth, and obviously it's a part of the main Robo's theme, and what's not to love? It's got everything you need. It's got a good tune, it's got a good beat, it's got everything. Destruction really had some cracking tunes, and honestly the music of Arenas of Destruction is probably some of the best in Robot Wars in general, and one of the better themes for me is the New York Steelworks. It is such a kick-ass tune. It's straight into the more exciting, more upbeat, more loud and brash sort of sound, and it definitely fits the theming with the sort of industrial sound effects in the background, which suits the arena that it's meant to be for. The New York Steelworks theme, I'm kind of disappointed they never used it for Extreme 1 onwards, because honestly it is the type of tune that they could have had in the background, but instead they opted for a more rock and roll, heavy metal sort of tune instead of the original synth sort of noise. And I mean, I'm okay with that. We got some great tunes out of that, but still, this is a theme that they probably could have used, and honestly should have used, because it really would have made sense in the background. It would have been awesome to hear that as like a robot is crushing another robot or just smashing it to smithereens. It is one of those tunes that is just so great to listen to, and for me it's one of those tunes that also gets better the more you listen to it. So here's New York Steelworks. You gotta feel the pain if you wanna gain. the top 5, we are entering what is pretty much the best of the best. And some people might find this quite a controversial placement, because obviously we're in the top 5 and this bit of music is so infamous, so famous, so beloved, that basically having it at 5 might be seen as controversial. What's at 5 is Hypno-Disc. The Hypno-Disc theme is just awesome. I mean, what else can I say? It's such a fast-paced tune, and it's just great to listen to. It definitely feels like you're on a flywheel almost, or you're seeing a flywheel, or the flywheel of Hypno-Disc just tearing into a robot. It's hypnotizing. It's a very hypnotizing theme. The fast-pacedness of it, the fact that it has like a sort of chorus or midsection to the tune really makes it sound even better in a way. It gives it some more uniqueness as opposed to just being a repetitive loop over and over again. And it's one of those themes that just constantly like gets better as it goes along. It feels like it gets more excited, more enjoyable. It gets more like upbeat almost. One of the things that I really love about this theme is just the way it begins. It begins almost like it's a flywheel spinning up to speed. And honestly, I want you to listen really closely and just hear the theme. It does sound like a flywheel spinning up to speed and then getting ready to just charge in and decimate the competition. It is probably the perfect spinner theme in general. And I can see why the Aftershock theme, which I've mentioned earlier, has a lot of similarities to this theme. It almost feels like the Aftershock theme was a supposed updated version of the Hypno-Disc theme, but for me, the Hypno-Disc theme is just so much better, and probably one of the more memorable pieces of music from Robowars, and probably one of the most beloved, so it might be controversial to have it at 5th, but there are four more that I personally think are so much better. Speaking of controversial placements, number 4 we have Activate. Activate is one of those tunes that almost every Robot Wars fan knows and recognises. It is one of the quintessential Robot Wars tunes. It is proper like hard rock, and it's just awesome to listen to. I mean, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here. Broken record. By just saying it, it's awesome, but really that's the gist of what makes a bit of Robot Wars music so good, is how awesome it is. But what makes this tune slightly better in many ways is just the way it builds up. You got this build up before the eventual like tune kicks in. The little bit of guitar playing in the background quite quietly, and then the drums hit, and then bang! It just explodes into action. And it's understandable why they use this tune a lot during the more action-packed battles, because it definitely is the most action-packed and most in-your-face most, rock and roll tune you can come up with, and Activate is just so awesome. Now, just like the dead metal theme, this theme does sort of borrow from other music. I believe this one seems to borrow a lot from the Fight song by Marilyn Manson. The same sort of tune or effect, the same sort of like beats almost, but this one does sound a little more fast paced, just like how dead metal's theme of Enter Sandman was a lot more fast paced as well, I guess, in comparison to Enter Sandman. I digress. This is just a great theme, and even if it does rip off from other tunes, who cares? I mean, they did a good job at trying to remix it, did a great job at trying to make it sound epic, and tried to make it sound effective in terms of, battle music in general, and that's what I gotta say. It did a great job, and I can see why this is considered one of one of the fans' most favourite, tunes out there, because it is so recognisable, because it is so in your face, so excited almost. And that's the feeling you get when you listen to Activate. It is excitement. And it really does feel like Activate has just been signalled and action is just about to take place. And that really is what makes Activate such a great tune. However, it's only number 4 because there are 3 others which I think are a hell of a lot better. Well, the New York Steelworks theme was one which I didn't understand why they didn't use in Extreme 1 onwards. This one I can understand why they didn't use it onwards, why you didn't use it in Extreme 1 onwards, and the reason why is because this is definitely a more slower paced theme, but holy shit, is this just a great tune. The North Sea Oil Rig tune is just so atmospheric. It sounds mechanical, it sounds robotic, and it has so much going to it for it. It like starts off really slow, it slowly builds up in speed as time goes by, and eventually it becomes a lot more hectic almost, and it almost perfectly describes a casual Road Wars battle. It could start off slow, and then it builds up into a bit more action, and eventually it starts coming all together in just all out mayhem. And honestly, the North Sea Oil Rig is one of those tunes that I think is quite underrated because it is just so atmospheric. It is so almost creepy to listen to, but it is just so good. It's something that you definitely hear from the older Road Wars seasons, like season 1, 2, 3 and 4, because it definitely has that sort of feel, the synth sort of tuning and just overall effectiveness. It does such a good job at building atmosphere, and I think that might be one of the reasons why it probably wasn't chosen, because it is more akin to something more from a sci-fi movie as opposed to, you know, robot combat. But still, I absolutely love the North Sea Aurora tune, and that's probably why I've put it at third, because I just adore it so much. It is just such a good tune and rather underrated, but I can understand why they didn't use it, because it is somewhat, and I repeat, somewhat inappropriate for an action-packed robot combat show, especially because it is more slower paced, more atmospheric, creepy sounding, as opposed to action-packed, which I can understand. But nonetheless, it is just an awesome tune. I hope you also enjoy it as well. Grand final theme is just epic. That's all that I can safely say about it. It is truly epic. It is a blast just to listen to. And it really is the perfect tune to have for the grand final, for a grand final battle. For me, a great grand final battle is something like not Hypno-Disc, Chaos 2 versus Pussycat, or, you know, Carbide versus Eruption in Series 10, or Apollo versus Carbide. You know, those sort of battles where it is just a slugfest. It is just a heavy-hitting battle where both robots are going at it, and they're both crippled, they're both slowly dying, and yet they're still just going at it. It's one of those tune, and this tune for me is just perfect. just perfect for those sort of epic grand final battles. And the reason why is because when you hear the tune, it starts off really loud and brash, and it really kicks ass, and then it goes into this more slower, more somber sort of tuning, this slow build up for the next bit. And that little section I always like to imagine is like what's happened before. This is how the robots have slowly grown through the series, how they have beaten every opponent, and now they're at the final stage and they're just ready. They're ready to kick ass, they're ready to take the crown, they're ready to maybe get second, or it's one of those, like, this is the final battle, this is it, this is what it all comes down to. And this tune certainly, for me, provides that sort of feeling. It definitely is one of the best tunes out there, and the perfect grand final theme you can think of. Now, whilst I've been a little bit critical when it comes to repetition in some of the tunes, this number one spot is perhaps one of the most repetitive tunes ever, but it is just perfect in every way. It is the perfect, Robot Wars tune you can come up with. And for me, it's understandable why this is the battle theme. The battle theme, aka 3, 2, 1, is just brilliant. It is pure brilliance. It is one of those tunes that you can hear in the background for a lot of the battles during Series 3 and 4 in particular, and it made it all exciting. Even the slower pace battles of Series 3 or 4, this tune in the background made it feel more exciting. It made it feel more blood pumping, almost, and I think that really makes it a genuinely good feeling. One of the other things that I really love about this tune is the slow build-up. It builds up with this sort of piston-sounding tune. It almost feels like this is the robots getting started, and then as soon as it goes into the beats, you start to get this feeling that this is where the robots are starting to go at each other. And then as soon as it starts getting a little bit louder, and it starts doing the repetitive dan 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 sort of tune, that for me is where the battles are truly taking place. That is where things are starting to get more pumped, and just it's one of the reasons why I absolutely love Series 3 and 4 in particular, why they're two of my favourite series of Robot Wars. In fact, they are my top 2 favourite series of Robot Wars, because that tune in the background, that little tune in the background, as insignificant as some people may think it is, it made it feel so awesome. It's just one of those things that are just there, and it just makes what it could be a really good battle even better, or make it what could be a bad battle actually enjoyable. And that, for me, is what makes 3-2-1, or the battle music, the greatest tune of them all. It is memorable. It is, it's... How do I describe it? It's like an earworm. It's something that will constantly nag at you. It will constantly stay in your head as soon as you hear it, and you want to hear it more and more and more, because it is just so good. And it's no wonder that it is the most played tune of them all. It is, for me, the best Robot Wars tune you can come up with, and almost perfect for a Robot Wars battle. It has the build-up, has the actual, getting ready sort of stage, and then it has the actual battle itself. And it makes everything so much better. So yes, that is my number one favourite Robot Wars tune. You're going to be listening to it in a minute, but I just have to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, even if you probably just skipped all these talking bits just to listen to the music, which is 100% understandable, especially with me pausing and stuttering all the time. I digress. Here's 3, 2, 1, activate. Hope you enjoy.